Okay, there we go. Now we're live.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to The Bible is Metal.
Welcome
after
to the Bible is
so
Metal.
long.
It has been a really long time.
It has. Has it been since last year?
It has. I think the last episode we put out was in like November of no, I'd gotten back from the UK, so it was.
Wait, no. We have done another episode because I remember we had an episode where I talked about how I got laid off in January.
Yes.
So
and then we had an episode where you did get a job.
Yes. Okay, so it hasn't been since last year.
It has been at least a couple months though.
It's been a while.
It has been ever since Corona, the beer virus, has struck again.
So many good memes.
So many good memes, but I'm also like, I also feel really bad because this, like, Jay knew someone, one of the older folk from her church died from it. So there's like a lot of, at least in our little family, there's a lot of hurt,
Yeah.
and frustration.
It's
and she
real.
lost her job and everything. So it's real, like
Mhm.
I think there's something to be said about the fact that a lot of this is still a very real thing.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
you know what? God is in control. God is big.
Yep.
I still have my job, so I really thank God for that,
Yeah.
So it's working out okay. But yeah, it's just kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Like
And
this month has been a bummer. It really has.
yeah. But now you're in some new digs.
I am. We have a light in here now.
Yes, an appropriate light too.
And you're sitting in a fuzzy chair.
I am.
That is so comfortable.
It is
Do you
comfortable.
like that chair? Or no?
I do. It's nice. It kind of arches my back in a way to where like I don't feel like I have to lay back, but like
Yeah.
I'm in the right spot. It's actually it's relaxing. I might fall asleep in the middle of the episode.
That would be bad, but
would be.
I wouldn't blame you too much. Those are great chairs.
Yeah,
I put them in here so we can play Super Smash Bros. And
Awesome. We have to after this.
I have to go get. Yeah, I gotta go get my Switch out of the living room, but
Okay.
we'll do it.
Yeah,
So-
but yeah, this month this whole period since COVID-19 hit has been pretty wild. A similar situation over here. I didn't lose my job. I've just been working remotely for the company that I got back when we talked about how I lost my job in January and then got a new one. So I'm still working there, which has been really great. By God's grace, I've been able to still take care of us during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's what's different about our situation is Michelle wasn't already working. So like the only difference now is that I'm at home and she's had to deal with me being home,
Right.
which she's adjusted, she's getting used to me being there all the time. But she's made it clear to me that I've put her off her routine quite a bit.
Yeah. No, that was something that me and Jay had to get used to right away. Was like, so when this first all went down, Jay came down with something and it just ended up being a cold, but we were really worried at first. So I told my boss, I'm like, hey, so my wife has something. We don't know what it is. Is it cool if I work from home? And he's like, yeah, sure. So I worked from home for like a week and a half, which, in the grand scheme of things isn't a whole lot, but for a job where you don't work from home really, like, I mean, my project at the time was writing software for a piece of equipment that was about the size of a car. So I can't really like test it. Like it's not like a small little computer board or something I can bring home and mess with on my desk. Like it's something that I really need to be in front of and pushing buttons and testing things and making sure it all works. So that was kind of interesting trying to figure out how to work from home, which I found out that I really hate doing. And then Jay was like, yeah, I hate this. Why are you still here? Because we like for that week, like we really clamped down, like because we weren't sure what she was sick with. So we're like, you know what? Nope. We never left the house. I would go out, and the only thing I would do every couple of days, I go out and get some groceries, and that was it. Like I missed my brother's wedding. Like there was a lot of really crappy things that happened as a result of that. But I get that because Jay started to get really frustrated. It's like, why are you still here? And I'm sitting there. It's like, I need to get out of here, but our house is 600 square feet and there's nothing I can't get away from you.
Yep.
So, yeah, so it's been interesting, trying to navigate life now because everyone's routine's getting messed up some.
Yeah, and apparently, kind of a sad part of all this is that apparently divorce rates are up because,
people are stuck together.
People are stuck together realizing
I don't really like you that much,
Yep.
which is really kind of a bummer.
That is a bummer. But man, it's one of those where, well, it probably would have happened eventually
Yeah.
if their marriage was that bad that they can't even stand being stuck in the same house. together
for like a week on end.
for like a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like, the suicide rate has gone up, which is super unfortunate. Like there have been a lot of like movements towards, helping, assist or helping, people that have been suicidal during this time. And it's just, it's rough for more than just the fact that some people have to live at home. Like,
Right.
and to me, like it was actually nice because like getting to be at home means that I kind of get to do my work in my underwear, which is nice.
Yeah, no, not putting like I'd roll up. It's like, okay, ordinarily, I got to be at work at 7:30. So now, wake up at 6:30, make coffee, take a shower. Now it's like wake up at 7:25, roll out of bed, put on a t-shirt and walk over to my computer and turn it on. Right? Like that was my morning routine for a while. And I've started going back into the office because we have a bunch of stuff going on that I really need to be there for. So that's been good for me because I'm just the way my brain works. Like I can't do work at home. Like home is home, work is work. Like I need to keep work at work, otherwise it doesn't get done. So my productivity went down the toilet. Like it was bad.
Gotcha.
But,
Yeah, when you build software for the cloud, it's pretty straightforward to just build wherever you're at.
Right. Yeah.
And that's something I thought about even at my last job was like, everything we do is none of it's here. Our servers aren't here. None of that stuff is here. It's all in the cloud. We use AWS. At Jolt, we used AWS. At Intermountain, we use Microsoft Azure. So like, a lot of cloud providers that were pushing up code too. And so like, it made no sense for us to really be in the office other than like to collaborate.
Yeah.
But because we're so efficient using Slack and like WebEx and all that, like there really isn't any need to be together other than just human interaction.
Right.
Which for some people, like it's a dream to work from home because they don't like the human interaction. But for other people, it's like, I need some human interaction.
Well, yeah, because I mean, for me, I didn't really care too much for the human interaction. I really never have.
Yeah.
I'm one of those introverted types that just does perfectly fine. Like where when this all hit and it's like, hey, we need you to stay inside and play video games with your friends. I'm like, sweet. I do that anyway, but now it's government approved.
Yeah, government approved. Yeah,
So
it's been pretty wild.
yeah, it's been wild, and that kind of threw a wrench in the whole Bible is metal thing because we couldn't congregate and I really want to keep the production level up, so doing it over Discord and stuff like that is just
It didn't seem right.
Didn't seem right, and
especially for a podcast that isn't like our full-time job.
Yeah.
It's like whenever we do this, we want it to be of a better quality.
Right.
And it's not just we got to get an episode out because, we need to make our money. Like
Right.
that's the joy of doing this kind of at our leisure.
Yeah. And I mean,
way.
and there's like part of it where I had to do a lot of introspection on like, and honestly, that kind of triggered some of this into this. We'll kind of segue into like what I want to get to for this episode. But there's a lot of it. This period has been really good of like, hey, what's really important in life and what's kind of like, cause we started losing things that we've taken for granted, but then you realize, it's like, hey, these are things that are actually super important. Like the value of community, the value of like being able to understand what other people are going through. Cause like I didn't lose my job. Jay lost her job. All of her in-law, like all of our brothers and sisters-in-law lost their jobs. So and then her dad took a 15% pay cut so that they wouldn't have to let anyone go. So it kind of, look at this. It's like, wow, like, my job's pretty secure now, but it could be gone in an instant. Like drawing my security from that is a really bad idea. So it's been really good for me to like kind of sit back and be like, yeah, it's like, what do I find important? Like what is my goal, I guess, in this, what's the way I can grow in this time,
Yeah.
So instead of just sit there and rage and go, wow, dang it, I want my restaurants or whatever.
Yeah.
which I've actually been surprised at how much I missed. Like,
yeah, I mean, we've still been, before I got my fancy pants espresso machine,
Right,
I was going to my local coffee shop like every single day, sometimes twice a day, spending way too much money,
Right.
like more so than I did before, just to kind of, do that whole support effort thing. We went to Black Bear Diner sometimes and did a takeout order and, just trying to support some of the more local family businesses.
Yeah, no, we did that a lot. We went to Proper a lot and we went to Spitz.
Proper
Proper's so good.
we're not in downtown that often anymore.
Yeah.
So like back when Ecclesia was at the school, like it was perfect to just go to Proper right afterwards. But now
Right.
that we're not really near Proper anymore, it's like
Yeah.
we got to go out of our way
Yeah.
to go to Proper.
No, Proper's good stuff. So, but yeah, no, sorry, I had totally interrupted you. Go ahead.
It's all good.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was talking about anyway.
Coffee shop.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we've just thankfully, Michelle and I are in a place where we actually really enjoy each other, in a sense of in our normal day-to-day lives, we typically do our own thing. There are things and times that we do stuff together, but for the most part, we still kind of have our own thing that we do. So then being cooped up in the house together, like it hasn't really been all that bad because we're still doing our own thing in a way. And then whenever we need to like, reach over and touch each other or reach over and give a hug or, do something together, then we will. There was a recent game that came out on the Switch. It's that 51 classic games. So there's like, Connect 4, not Connect 4. What is it called? You put the tokens in the top part.
Yeah, it's Connect 4.
Okay, yeah, there's Connect 4 in there.
Is it Connect 4? I think it's Connect 4.
I think it's Connect 4.
I think it's Connect 4.
There's Connect 4, there's chess, there's Sudoku, there's a bunch of like classic board-ish games on there.
Right, okay.
That are like perfect for her and I, and it's like a touchscreen type game.
Okay.
You can use Joy-Cons, but like it's more meant for like a pass the Switch kind of a situation because you could play with up to 4 players on some of these.
Right.
So I think I'm going to get that probably today so that Michelle and I can start doing some of that. But other than that, like it's heartbreaking to hear, how everyone else is taking the pandemic. But of course looking inward, it's like I'm thankful and I'm grateful, where we're at and how we're doing and how God has helped us through this time.
Right.
But with all that being said, there's more than just the pandemic going on.
There is.
Like,
and that's kind of the big big
reason.
thing. This is the big reason is like, and I wrote this before. I wrote out kind of a letter to our listeners, like an open letter to our listeners. And if you haven't read that, it's on our Facebook and our Instagram. And
which, can I interrupt you for a second and
yes.
say that I loved every word of that letter?
Thank you.
Like, you sent it over to me, because of course we wanted to be in this together and like,
Yeah, I mean, me and Jay had just gotten out of like a 3-hour conversation where I'm like, you know what? I really need to say something about this. Like I felt very convicted and very, very, my heart was very, very heavily, like all I could think about was like, I really, really need to say something,
Yeah.
So
when you sent that over to me and I read it, I'm like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
This is exactly what needs to be said. And it was so gospel oriented, which I'm sure George Floyd would have wanted. Like when, I've been learning a lot about him, like this whole,
yeah, he was
this
like,
whole time.
he ran a bunch of like inner city ministries and the projects in, was it San Antonio or Dallas or a city in Texas? I do remember that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
But like, he really was like, he was a godly man. And I
Yeah.
think, and it breaks my heart, where people are like, but it's like, oh, well, maybe he, like when they're talking about the, like with the whole autopsy thing, they're trying to slide in and whatever narcotics he had in his system or something like that. And I'm just like, dude, what? Like if he had narcotics in his system, just say it,
Yeah.
Don't try to hint that there might have been narcotics in his system, like that you didn't catch on the autopsy. Like that's super lame.
Yeah.
And it totally, it looks like they're trying to like pit victim blame, right? It's like, oh, well, he was drunk. It was like, so what? Like if a white guy gets drunk, he gets thrown in the drunk tank to sleep it off. And then he goes home the next day to his family.
Yeah.
Like that's a problem.
Yeah.
So I just, yeah, like I've really been thinking a lot about, what is my role as a follower of Christ in this, like, and especially it's like especially from someone who listens to a lot of metal, which lately has been taking a very, very political stance. Like August Burns Red, their last album, I think, was almost entirely about like written from a perspective of calling out like social justice issues. And if you've ever heard the song Ghosts by them, which is like about homeless veterans and they just like, they've always been really big on their like Make Them Suffer, just released a single about sexual abuse and how that's never covered properly. and like Fire from the Gods is a band that literally exists to comment on the black life in America and police brutality and stuff like that. And like so there's like this culture of calling out like America's crap
Yeah.
in metal. And it's like, okay, so if we are metalheads, but we're also Christians, but then also the Christianity is like that has always been Jesus's goal as well. Like when he cleaned out the temple,
Yeah.
like people committing injustice in the temple, and Jesus is like, I will not have this, and taking a whip
And whipped him a new one.
and whipped him a new one and turned tables over and got mad. It's like that's like we as Christians, like we should be facing injustice with that level of I wouldn't necessarily say with that level of action, but because when Jesus does something, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say with that level of anger, like injustice should anger us to that level, right?
Yeah. And to like comment on that, we've said this before that there is such a thing as a godly anger. Like anger in and of itself is not a sinful emotion.
No.
It is a emotion. And there are plenty of times where that emotion is completely justified. To be angry is not a sin, as long as you're angry at the right thing and for the right reason.
Well, and you're not letting your anger control you.
Yeah.
Because like the one thing that my mom always talked about, and this is something I grew up with because a lot of the people in my family have very fiery tempers. And I don't. I take more after my mom, and my mom is really, 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 really quiet and sweet. And I love my mom, but I just don't have the anger side. I just kind of
Neither
get
do I.
sad. It's like, but when people get angry, it kind of scares me, And but that's not because anger is bad. It's just because I don't get that way. But the problem is when I do get angry, I lash out. I say things I shouldn't. Like I don't want. I have a hard time controlling anger when I do get angry. But I also recognize it's like sometimes righteous anger is a godly thing, because there's many times when God burned with anger against Israel, against Israel's enemies.
That was
like,
the Old Testament in a nutshell.
right,
God burned with anger.
I mean, you're not wrong at all. Like there's like God and anger kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say go hand in hand, but looking at how God is angry is very I think very valuable and valid from the life of a Christian to understand. It's like, when you have your anger, channel it towards change,
Yeah.
and fixing things. And because a lot of people look at anger and then immediately equate anger with revenge. And it's not about revenge. It's about looking at that and say anger at the system, or anger at, I hate using buzzwords. I'm going to try to avoid it just because I think people use them so much, it loses its meaning.
Yeah.
But people like anger at the fact that qualified immunity is a perfect example of something that I've personally been really frustrated with, where it's like a cop can do this and now I really want to come right out and say, it's like, I don't think cops are bad. I'm not going to say cops are them, we're us, and it's against the cops and screw the cops and all that stuff. It's like, I see so many good things that cops that actually take their job seriously and serve their community the way that they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Those are good. That is a good thing. They are in a position of power and they're using it to better the lives of people around them. That is good.
Yes. So God bless the cops that are that way.
God bless the cops that are that way. Absolutely.
But to the ones that aren't.
To the ones that aren't, the ones that use their power as a club, that's a problem. And the fact that they can with very little pushback is an issue. Because I saw this thing on Reddit the other day where someone was like, hey, it's like someone, I think it was in Kentucky, where a lawmaker proposed a bill where cops have to be licensed. And I'm thinking, like, are they not? Like, is that something that doesn't already exist? Like shouldn't that already be a thing? Like, I mean, for something that important, it's like a hairdresser. Like my sister-in-law is a hairdresser and she's a great hairdresser, but because she went through training and practice and has to renew her she has to have a license to practice cutting hair, you know. It's like how does that require more training than becoming a cop? Like that blows my mind. But or require more certification or something like that. Like that's crazy to me.
Like I think about my brother-in-law who wanted to be a police officer. One of the best men that I know who is all about peacemaking. Like, if he would have become a police officer, I know he would have done a fabulous job.
Right.
As far as his personality, his morals, and what drives him as a person of justice. But the one thing that didn't allow him through was his inability to pass the physical test. Like, he was close. He was very close. Like, my goodness, as far as the points or whatever they do to base it on, he was super close, but didn't quite make it. And I think to myself, why is it that, okay, maybe he didn't pass the physical test, but man, as far as the rest of it is concerned, he would have made an excellent cop.
Right.
You know, and the physical part he could have continued to improve upon.
Right.
You know,
it's like anyone can get in shape.
Exactly. And he was like, he was still, you know, a little chubby, but he's a tall, big man that can use that stature and use his sense of justice to do great in his community. But because he didn't pass the physical part of it, he didn't make it.
Yeah.
You know, and I get it. There are going to be people that say, well, you know, if you're not physically fit in those situations, you know, then how can you be expected to chase someone down or, you know, pin someone down or, you know, handle situations that take a certain amount of physical physique.
Right.
But at the same time, that's not every situation.
It's not. And I would say probably 90, like a lot of situations where that sort of thing is required or ends up being required. I think if the cop was in question, and sometimes it's unavoidable. So I'm not going to say it's like, oh, like if they were just better at de-escalation, this would never happen. It's like, that's
sometimes
not
you can't
the case.
avoid it.
And sometimes you can't avoid it. And sometimes people just want to see the world burn, you know?
Yeah.
And when you're fighting criminals like that, you know, all bets are kind of off in this area, but it's like, there's a lot of cases where it's like, if they were better at dissolving a situation peacefully, a lot of this just wouldn't happen. You know, which really sucks to say. And it's like, and it's hard for me to say that. Like, it's like, you know, when you're stuck in a situation, you have to make these snap judgments. It's hard to do the right thing.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, and I'm not trying to like downplay. It's like, if you're a lesser person because, you know, or if a cop decides to pull a gun in a situation where he's legitimately worried for his life or something like that. Like, I mean, I don't know. There's so many layers to it.
Yeah.
You can't just say one definitive thing and say, this is bad.
Exactly.
It's way more nuanced than that, but
it's not as black and white as some people may want to make it.
Right. And condemning when cops do the wrong thing, but their hearts are in the right place is kind of weird. It's kind of a mixed bag where you're kind of trying to figure out, it's like, okay, I don't know where I was really going with that, but it's really understanding. It's like like part of peacemaking is really understanding the other person's side. Cause if you just see them as like this black box, them, right? Then they're the enemy, you know, it's like in Halo. If you ever played Halo is like they're like the enemy is introduced to you as the Covenant, you know?
Yeah.
And that's it. Like you don't like, I've been reading the Halo books because the Halo game is actually really boring, but I like the story, so I didn't want to lose my nerd cred, so I got the books instead. So, but they're just kind of introduced as the Covenant. But then in the books, like they're given names, they're given faces, they're given goals and wants and personality, and it's like when there's that, it makes the story so much more. It gives it so much more depth in a lot of ways, and that's the scary thing about a lot of the rhetoric on both sides of the fence. And I know this sounds like super quote unquote enlightened centrist, you know, like I'm not trying to take that stance where I'm like, you're both wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Like I'm not trying to like soothe the egos, but it's like, there's a lot of truth to the fact that it's like when you're trying to make peace with someone, you have to understand what's going on in their head, you know?
And like, I was reflecting similar on that situation this week that, you know, you see a lot of people come out on social media, you know, everybody's trying to make their statement and make their peace. And unfortunately, some of them are just doing it because it's kind of the, you know, it's the dutiful thing to do on social media. But, you know, you see what I love, Sugar House Coffee put out a post on Instagram that essentially said, you know, we believe that Black Lives Matter, and that does not mean that no one else matters. It just means that right now in this given situation, the Black Lives Matter. And it's like, I love that because that statement, though some people may believe that it means that just Black Lives Matter, but the majority, and for those of us who know better, it doesn't mean that.
Right.
It means that in this situation, Black Lives Matter.
Right. And it's an easy straw man, right? Because you're like, oh, Black Lives Matter, but it's because they're supposed to be them. You know, it's like you look at that and you're like, oh, well, Black Lives Matter. What about white lives? And it's like there's this pastor that posted this video. I loved it. I shared it on Facebook. It was great. And he's like, he goes, anyone with a functioning brain can tell you that all lives matter.
Yes.
Because all lives do matter.
Yes.
Obviously. Duh.
Yeah. It's a duh statement.
Duh. But he's like, until all lives matter equally,
Yes.
we will say that Black lives matter because
Yes.
some people still need to hear that.
Yeah.
Like, and that's kind of the crux of a lot of bitterness and anger is the fact that people just don't understand the other side at all. Like, and there's some people where it's like they're legitimately racist and think Black people are the scum of the earth. And to people like that, I say, you know what, man? You need Jesus.
You need Jesus.
You need Jesus. I mean, I have a lot stronger words to say to people like that, but
you know what?
I don't want to hit the explicit tag on this episode.
In a Southern way, bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
Which means F you in Southern.
F you in Southern.
But you know what? You need
bless
Jesus.
their heart.
You need Jesus.
Yeah. So, and then, when we're thinking about, it's like, you know what does God say about this?
Yeah.
Really, really, all this comes down to, what does God say about this? We are reminded of the one Bible story that I think more people know than anything else, I would say, is the Good Samaritan.
The Good Samaritan? Oh, I thought we were going to talk about the Samaritan woman.
Oh, really?
Huh. I like where this is going.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Well, maybe we can do the Samaritan woman too, because it kind of goes hand in hand.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay.
That's not how I planned this going, but you know what? That's okay.
Okay. Well, you handle one story and I'll handle the other. How
Sounds
about that?
good. So
Off the cuff, baby. Yeah.
off the cuff. Let's do this. So the reason why this sticks out to me is because a lot of the Jews were racist pieces of crap.
To put it very bluntly.
To put it very bluntly, and that's why there's a lot of this that has a lot of parallels to today's world. And the big thing is the Jews and then the Samaritans were kind of like, they're two different people groups that kind of diverged from the original kingdom back in like the 1200s BC. So the Samaritans, what the Samaritans were, is they were mixed with, when the northern kingdom fell to Assyria, the Assyrians and the leftover Jews stayed in Samaria, which was in the northern kingdom. It was the capital city of the northern kingdom. And then they kind of had like this weird hybrid civilization of Jewish and Assyrian culture where they assimilated, like obviously they were mixed like ethnically, but then there was also they kind of mixed the religions a little bit. They mixed some politics in there, and the best way I can say it is the Jews saw them as filthy half-breeds. That's the best way I can describe it.
Yes,
like they saw them as like, or if you ever read Harry Potter,
they're mudbloods.
They're mudbloods, yeah.
Oh
but and treated with the same level of scorn. Like
yes,
they were treated very poorly. They were like, if they like, I don't know if they were.
Wow, even racism's in Harry Potter. I forgot about that.
Yeah, well, racism's a thing. Like it's a very, the depressing thing is it's a very recognizable human trait.
Yeah.
And I mean that doesn't make it bad. It just makes it, or that doesn't make it good. No, it is bad. Racism is bad.
Racism is bad.
Let's start at square one. Racism is bad.
Yep.
Okay, cool. We're on the
Dumb
same
moment.
page. Dumb moment. So there was a lot of individual points in Jewish history where there was like individual conflicts between Samaritan people and Jewish people, like Nehemiah and the grandson of the Samaritan priest, had a huge falling out, and that was a big split because Nehemiah was like rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem, and then the Samaritans wanted to help, and they're basically, it's like, no, screw off, middle fingers in the air kind of thing.
Yeah,
you're a bunch of filthy half breeds.
You're a bunch of mudbloods.
You're a bunch of mudbloods. Get out of here. So Samaria, they sided with like in the Maccabean Wars. Maccabean Wars.
Yeah.
So they sided against the Orthodox Jews in the Greek takeover and stuff like that. So there was a lot of there's a lot of political hatred by the time Jesus comes around. They hated each other. We're to the point where they would take like 4 or 5 extra days to walk around Samaria to get from one point in Israel to another.
And let me highlight, that was one thing I did a lot of digging because I have a lot of Bible atlases, and this was one thing I wanted to look at.
Sweet. Okay, cool.
So the path, there was many paths. There was three common paths to get from Jerusalem or from Judah up to Galilee. And that's kind of going to be a part of my story when we talk about the Samaritan woman.
Cool.
But essentially, you're right. Jews would take this path that essentially, instead of passing through Samaria, which you're right, it is literally, it cuts out a couple of days worth of travel. Instead, what they would do is they'd go down into the valley where the Jordan River is going through. And they would cross the Jordan River and walk on the east side of the Jordan River so that they can completely pass Samaria, which is a long trek, and it's up and down very steep mountains. So like it's not a nice terrain to go on, but they would take the risk of this terrain just to avoid.
Well, it was dangerous too, because there'd be highwaymen and robbers and stuff. Because in the mountainous terrain, there's a lot of places for people like that to hide.
There's caves, you know, there's a lot of that. And so they would cross the Jordan River, go up on the east side of it. They'd cross it again in another high spot.
They hated these people so much, they would risk their lives rather than run into one on the road.
I would rather die than to come near mudblood.
Like, I mean, we laugh about it, but it's like that level of racism. I mean, I think we still kind of see that to some degree, but that sort of vitriolic hatred.
Yeah.
You don't see as much today, at least in the U.S. You did. I would say in the 50s and 60s were especially bad. And when all this stuff started to get caught on camera, like there was that level of hatred towards people because they were black or they were Latino or they were Chinese or Irish. I don't fill in the blank of your oppressed group of the day, quote unquote, you know. And it's just there's so much hatred and this is the best part and why I think this is really valid today. And it's like, and I wouldn't necessarily pin this on people. I think a lot of it is now rooted in ignorance, but the fact where it's like the Jews think they're better than Samaritans. God loves them more because they were with God till the end. They never intermixed with those filthy Assyrians. They never, they fought for the righteous cause in the Maccabean Wars and like stuff like that. It's like they legitimately thought they were better and the Samaritans were the scum of the earth. That is a legitimate thing. Yeah. I'm not exaggerating in this.
And what bothers me about that is that you even read in the book of Deuteronomy when God says of the many reasons, he mentions all the reasons that he could have chosen Israel over other people groups. One of the many things was he's telling them, I didn't choose you because you were great. I didn't choose you because you were stronger. I didn't choose you because you were more righteous, because you're not,
In a way, he almost chose them because they were the opposite of many of those things.
Like he chose them because he made a promise to their ancestor.
Right.
And
who was a righteous man.
Yeah.
To some degree. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like God set his affections on the Jewish people for completely different reasons. And unfortunately they took that as pride. Yeah. Their pride was filled with that. We're special to God, therefore everyone else is the scum of the earth. Right. And that's not how God saw everyone else, especially when you consider a prophet like Jonah. Jonah was sent to a Gentile nation to save them from God's wrath.
I know. And he took it as a mission. He's like, I'm going to go tell them that God's going to set them on fire. And then he
God's going to judge you.
And then he set up a bench to watch because what kind of level of like,
gosh,
of like, I would say that was inherently racist.
Yes.
He's like, I'm going to look at your pain and I'm going to find it funny.
Yeah.
This is entertaining to watch God burn you off of the face of the earth.
And then I'm going to get pissed off when he doesn't.
And then I'm going to get mad when he doesn't because I felt like I was owed the entertainment of watching God burn you off the face of the earth. Like how, just messed up is that?
That's very
like
messed up.
When you look at like all these figures in the Bible, like you look back and you're like, wow, dude, like.
And that's in the Bible. The Bible is metal.
The Bible is metal. People suck. People always have sucked. And it's like, in some measures, they sucked even worse than they do now. And that doesn't mean that people still don't suck. And there's a lot of ways that people can be better, but also, putting it in perspective of like, there's a reason the Good Samaritan is such a potent story because of the level of hatred that the Jews had for people that weren't Jews.
Yeah.
And especially the Samaritans, because they felt like they were Jews that were tainted. So there was like an extra level special of hatred for them.
Yeah. And then for Jesus to come on the scene.
right. And then
And to
Jesus,
use them in an example.
I know, not only that, but that's why we kind of set the story is like, we need you to understand the gravity of the Good Samaritan. Like
Yes.
everyone's heard this story, and the most people take away from it is don't be a dick, right?
Yeah,
Like that's say is like, oh, if you see a broken man on the road, help him. It's like, well,
don't
yeah,
be,
sure.
be a good Samaritan.
That's that you can take that away from it. It's like, oh, be
Sure.
kind to people that need help.
Or need, yeah.
But there's more to it than that. It's so much deeper than just be nice. It doesn't matter, like doing the right thing when you hate someone is somehow more potent, and it's good for you too, because it will start to work on your heart when you actually take the posture of, I do not like this person, regardless of your reasoning, but you turn the other cheek, you are kind to them, you make their lives better, not because they deserve it, but because God made them as a person and they inherently have value, you know?
Yeah.
So, okay. So the good parable of the Good Samaritan, yeah, let me start over. The parable of the Good Samaritan is, so it's pretty short. So on one occasion, an expert of the law, this is in Luke, what chapter is this? Oh, okay.
Looking at your
Luke,
tiny text on the
yeah,
screen.
I am. Luke 10, chapter verse 25. On one occasion, the expert of the law stood up to test Jesus. So the law, like the Pharisees, love to just think they were so good and so much better than
It's
Jesus.
so cringy too.
It's kind of cringy, yeah. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And then God's like, well, what is written in the law? You know, it's like, duh, you know the law, dude.
Yep,
Like he
God's
knew,
word.
he knew what was doing on, right? What was going on, right?
Real quick to throw in there, like just to mention it again, this is in the law. Like how many times did God give them the law and say, this is my law, this is an expression of my character, and you're ignoring it.
Yeah.
Continue.
And he's like, what's in the law? And the guy's like, oh, this is what's in the law, right? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus said, yeah, you're right. Do this and you will live.
Good job, you know your law.
Good job. You know the law. And so then he's like, but I wanted to justify himself. So, or the Pharisee's like, I want to justify myself. He says, the Bible says he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, well, who's my neighbor? He's trying to trap Jesus into like, or not only that, but like he wants himself to look good. He's trying to trap Jesus into saying something that will validate his current, like maybe his level of righteousness, maybe how much he hates Samaritans or whatever, or Greeks, or because I know that the Jews and the Greeks did not get along, because this is still when the Greeks lived in Israel as part of like when Jerusalem was a Greek polis is what they call them. Actually this is after the Romans took over the Greeks. The Greeks was about 150 years prior ish. So then the Romans came over, and now this is under Roman control. So the Jews hated the Romans, and then so there's just a lot of political drama. Like look at the time of Jesus. There is racial hatred. There is political drama.
Yeah,
there's
sounds familiar.
The Zionists that were rioting and stuff, and murdering the Roman guards and stuff like that. There's a lot of not Zionists. Sorry, the Zealots. Which was Jesus's closest disciples.
Yeah,
which is really great.
Let's not forget that.
Yeah. So
one of Jesus's disciples was a rioter.
So that's something to note.
Not to justify rioting,
but just to know. I mean, also one of Jesus's was a tax collector and robbed poor people. So there's that.
Yes.
So Jesus liked to use broken people. That's just a common theme in the scripture.
Yep.
But he says, okay, so he wants to justify himself. He asked Jesus, who is my neighbor? So Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went him away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road. So this is a Jewish man that is going down the Jordan River from Jerusalem to Jericho. Probably doing the same thing that you said, dodging Samaria, up in the mountains. He gets attacked by robbers. Yeah. Took his stuff, left him for dead. So, a priest happened to be going down the same road. Godly man. You'd think surely he would do something. He saw the man. He walked by on the other side. This is a Jew to another Jew. This is not a Jew, like the Jews, or like ignoring the Samaritans thing. This is a Jew. Just ignoring another Jew.
Yep.
And so too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him pass by on the other side. The Levites
Were the priests.
were the priests. So like, well, I mean, they were like the family of Levi, which
Oh,
were
yeah,
all or deacon, I guess would probably be a better
Yeah.
way. A modern example was like, so someone who worked in the temple was a godly man to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then the last thing that then the next one that came by, he said, Levi came when he came to the place and saw him pass by on the other side. But a Samaritan, verse 33, but a Samaritan, as he traveled, came to where the man was. And when he saw him, he took pity on him. This is a man. So, in my opinion, I would say in today's climate, the Jews are like the white people and the Samaritans are like the black people.
You could put it that
To
way.
some degree, yeah. Like I wouldn't call it a perfect parallel at
Yeah.
all. But the Jews are the ones that are in the position of power to some. Like I mean, and they're still being like stepped on by the Romans. So there's a whole
Yeah.
other layer of stuff going on
Yeah.
there. But they think they're better. Like they've been mistreating the Samaritans for hundreds of years. Like there's a lot of parallels to some of this like cultural stuff. Like I would never pin singular acts of white on black violence to people, but it's like
Yeah.
as a general rule, it's a verifiable fact that we as white people have had it better in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Just bar none, you know. But he's like, so someone came upon him and someone who had every right to just walk the other way. He
Mhm.
sees a Jew on the road that's almost dead. He's like, you know what? He could have just walked the other way. No one would have blamed him at all.
Yeah.
And then he didn't. He chose, you know what? I'm going to take this person. He took him, he went to him, bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, which is money, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn and took care of him the next day. He took out 2 denarii, which is 2 days' wages, gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. This man is not only going out of his way to take care of this man, he is giving financially. He is using his supplies, his traveling supplies. He is laying down the hatchet and willing to look after this man because this man has value, you know? And that's kind of, and then he said, and then Jesus asked this guy, and let me finish and then we'll kind of pick it apart.
Mm-hmm.
Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell in the hands of robbers? And the expert in the law told him, the one who had mercy on him. Can't even bring himself to say
Yep.
the Samaritan.
Yep.
And then Jesus told him, go and do likewise.
Oh man.
Right?
I didn't notice the part where he couldn't even say.
He couldn't even say Samaritan. Like that's just like, you know,
the pride.
the amount of pride, but also you can hear the conviction
Yes.
because he can't look Jesus in the eye. Like he's like, oh, the one who had mercy is like, and Jesus, if he was being especially petty, he goes, who is that?
Who's that?
Come on, answer now. Who was it? You know, and that's like thinking about that is like, who is your neighbor? You know, it's like, it is not, when you look at the Good Samaritan, you know, you look at a certain thing, it was not his job. There was no expectation for him to take care of this man.
Mm-hmm.
There was no, like, no one would have blamed him if he went and walked the other way. But not only that, it's like, no one really would have thought he needed to, you know?
Nobody would have expected
It's like in that day and age, you probably saw someone on the side of the road and you're like, well, that sucks. And then you just kind of keep moving on, you know, like it even necessarily may not even be a bad thing for someone who probably looked like he was dead, you know. I don't know what the customs are. I'm just kind of extrapolating at this point, but
And also put himself in the same danger too, because clearly this man was beaten and robbed, and you know those people can also be used as bait for more beating and robbing,
right.
you know. And so you'd imagine that the priests walking by, they probably got a lot of money on them. They probably got their families with them or something,
Right.
and you know they got a lot to lose, you know. And in this case, even the Good Samaritan, he had a lot to lose. Like he could have approached this man and then would have been ambushed. Like he's putting himself in danger in this situation, but he does so to help the man.
To help the man. And he went out of his way, giving of his time, resources, and money to care for this man who felt like, and it wasn't the Samaritan's fault, right? Like that's the big thing is like, this wasn't the Samaritan's fault, but he took it on himself anyway, because he saw a person that God made that had value, and he chose to take it on himself to take care of this man because it is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not through any sort of guilt, not through any sort of like conviction or anything. He's like, this is a man who needs my help, and he chose to do it. You know, that is your neighbor.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
So it's kind of, I think the story is way more poignant than we ever give it credit for.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I wanted to share that. I thought that was really, really important. And I think something, if that is our expectation as believers, it's like, if there's the take away the expectation. If you see someone hurting, Jesus is commanding us to go do something about it,
To be a neighbor.
To be a neighbor. That is our role, like, and I don't know. Like, I read that, and for whatever reason, I've read the Good Samaritan more times than I've ever counted. I've read that story so many times. I could probably recite it to you from heart, by heart, But this is the first time I look back and say, and been really convicted by what Jesus is really asking us to do, So anyway, so that's the Good Samaritan. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think we pretty much covered that.
All right, cool.
But in the similar vein, same thing, the story of the Samaritan woman.
Right.
So here's the story of the Good Samaritan, which was more of a parable, could have been based on real events, but that
likely
was
just a story.
Yeah, it was a parabolic moment where he was teaching somebody a lesson. In that case, this story was an actual story. This happened, and this happened in the life of Jesus, and people were there to witness it, kind of a thing. It wasn't just a teachable moment, though it is a teachable moment.
Yeah.
And this was the story of the Samaritan woman. Jesus leaving Judea, heading to Galilee, which is north of where he was from, or where he was at. And then in this path, he has to make a decision. Am I going to take the quick path and go through Samaria, or am I going to take the long path and go down through the Jordan River
and then all the way around,
the way around? And the Bible says, actually, here, let me pull out my brick.
You brought your brick today.
I brought my brick today. All right, there it is. So I'll go and just read some of this. Now, when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again to Galilee. And he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, because it's a long one, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 16th hour. A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria?" So even this woman is shocked.
Yeah, it's like not only is Samaria, but also a woman of Samaria.
Yes.
Like she points out that fact.
Yeah, so two bits here. A, I'm a Samaritan, so I'm a mudblood kind of a thing to you.
Right.
And B, I'm a woman and you're a man, so kind of getting into some...
It's like, why are you talking? Like, and not necessarily of like a condemning. It's like, why are you talking to me? It's like,
Yeah.
Even there might have been some of that. I don't know.
I think it was more of just a shock of like, wow, how are you even...
Yeah.
How can you even think to drink from my same vessel? Because Jews want no contact, no touching of the same vessels, social distancing to the max.
Well, it's like the drink. It would be like, imagine, go back to 1950s and you see a white person waiting in line for the black drinking fountain.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Yeah.
Like to some
That's
degree.
a very good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, let's see.
And then they're like, what are you doing here? The white drinking fountain's like...
Yeah.
or whatever. Yeah.
For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. Okay, it says it in the scriptures right there. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that was saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you the living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep, bruh. Where do you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock." Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again, and the water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up into eternal life. So there's a lot more that's said in that story, but I think the big thing here is in a similar situation, here is this well-respected, well-known Jewish prophet that even, people in the surrounding areas know who he is.
Yeah, for better or worse, people know who Jesus is.
Exactly.
Right.
Like they either know him as a criminal or they know him as a great, merciful man, who has healed people, depending on what side of the fence you're on.
Right.
But here is this opportunity for Jesus to avoid Samaria like everyone else normally would, but he doesn't. He and his disciples go through instead, and he comes across this Samaritan woman. Again, just considering all the racial upheaval, all of the differences, and even in a society like that, a patriarchal society where women were less than men in general.
Right.
So that's another thing. It's like we mentioned before, not only is this a race issue, this is also a sexist issue, and so she's shocked. She's like, how can you, a Jewish man, talk to me, a Samaritan woman? Like it's a double barrel rifle.
Right. Yeah. It's like, okay. How do I get out of this safely? I just want to go home. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Cause
It's like, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even in those days, like Jewish men's words were taken more seriously than even Jewish women's words. Like in court and all that. And unfortunately, we have seen much of that throughout history, even in American history. So yeah, in a similar situation, like I don't want to get in trouble here. Like what's up? But in this situation, Jesus, despite the shock of even his disciples later, has considered this woman. He's shown grace to this woman, and he eventually tells her, "Look, I'm the one who's going to give you this water of eternal life." And I'm the Messiah, because she brings up like, oh, are you, we know that the Messiah is going to come someday, and he's going to sort out this whole racial issue. And he's sitting there like, the one who's speaking to you is he.
Right.
Like, I'm the guy.
It's like, that's me.
That's me. Hi. Let me just awkwardly mention that.
Hey there.
Hey there. And so I guess not as deep as the Good Samaritan story, but this is another instance where Jesus, a Jewish man, and his disciples come across a Samaritan person, and that whole racial difference is not a thing. Jesus he has come to bring salvation, and whether you're a Jew, a Samaritan, or a Gentile, or whatever, he's brought salvation.
Right.
And then there was another story that I thought about.
What were you thinking?
Do you remember the story of the woman? It's in Matthew 15. It's the Canaanite woman that comes to Jesus, and she's begging that Jesus would cast out the demon that's in her daughter. She's like, my daughter has a demon. Can you help me? Remember that story?
I want to say there's a lot of those, to be honest.
There is. You're not wrong.
And I need to get back on the horse of actually digest. I've been reading a lot of not history.
Well, let me read it real quick. It's a short one. And this is in Matthew 15, verse 21. And Jesus went away from there and withdrew to the district of Tyre and Sidon, and behold, a Canaanite woman. Okay, so this is a Gentile woman, not necessarily a Samaritan woman. Same thing. Jews disdain the Gentiles as well. Another racial issue. From that region came out and was crying, have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David. My daughter is severely oppressed by a demon, but he did not answer her a word. And his disciples came and begged him, saying, send her away, for she's crying out. She's crying out for us. Like, come on, Jesus. Like, she's kind of annoying. Send her away.
Yeah.
And he answered, I was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Okay, interesting statement. We'll unpack it. But she said and knelt before him, saying, Lord, help me. And he answered, it is not right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. And she said, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. Then Jesus answered her, O woman, great is your faith. Be it done for you as you desired. And her daughter was healed instantly. Very interesting spot where you could almost see even the racism in Jesus's words, calling her a dog in so many ways.
Right, and that's kind of a difficult one. I'm kind of curious to hear what you have to say, because
so here's the thought. The scholars will go up and down saying that the word that he used as dog is not like the actual insult dog, that it was like little dog or little puppy or something like that. Whatever. Aside from that, this Canaanite woman, knowing full well that this Jewish Messiah, doesn't owe her anything, But, Gentiles who were familiar with the law, they knew that even God's grace extends, beyond the Jews and to the Gentiles. Like, he reigns in the just and the unjust, kind of a thing.
Right.
But I also wonder about this woman and what she might think in this situation of, here I am, a Canaanite woman, coming to a Jewish man for help, and kind of maybe in some sense, like, what I'm saying is I don't want to pin all the racism on the Jews, because the other people were racist as well. The Canaanites were racist against the Jews, and it's kind of a double barrel. So in this situation, she could be using the mercy of Christ to kind of be like racist Jews, your Messiah is going to help me too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I mean that's actually a really good point, because I'm wondering if she's trying to pull like a gotcha on Jesus.
Exactly.
I mean, it might actually be a very valid question. And he goes, "Hey, like, what if you change the inflection of the question a little bit? Say, don't you know that I'm the Jewish Messiah? Like Jesus is asking her, like, it's like, why are you coming to me? I'm the Jewish Messiah.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, hey, even we'll get some scraps from the master's table.
Yeah.
We'll still get fed.
Yeah.
And that was after the heart of Jesus, because he comes out a lot and says stuff like that, where he's like, my great, or like, my mercy will be for, I can't remember the exact verse, and I'm totally probably butchering it, but he's like, my grace will be for all people, and I don't know if it was so much of a legitimate question or an incredulity. He's like, well, hey, I'm the Jewish Messiah. Like, why the hell are you asking me? It was more of a question of like, so I'm the Jewish Messiah, and yet you still come to me. Like, it was like a test.
Yes.
Like, change the inflection, and Jesus is really asking her, what's her motivation here?
Yes.
And she goes, because I believe that you can heal my daughter.
Yeah.
That's what she's getting after, and it's not Jesus being racist.
Exactly. And so along those same lines, Jesus not wanting to be a pawn in her game either. It's like Jesus doesn't want to be a pawn in the rich young ruler, or the guy that you brought up in the Good Samaritan story. He doesn't want to be a pawn in his justifying himself thing. And he doesn't want to be on hers either. Here she could be saying, oh yeah, your Jewish Messiah is going to help me, and like to kind of curb your racism kind of a thing.
Right.
But Jesus is like, no, I'm not playing that game.
Yeah. It's not about, and he goes, and she goes, well, I mean, you could even like kind of rephrase that to some degree. I want to try to be careful when stuff like this happens.
Absolutely.
But also at the same time, what I see in the intent behind Jesus' words is he goes, so do you think I'm just the Jewish Messiah? And she says, no. Everyone's going to get something. And he's like, yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Go, your daughter is healed.
Yep.
Your faith, because she truly believes that that's what Jesus is there for.
Yeah.
He's there for the healing of all people.
Yeah.
He's for everyone. It's not just, he's like, but don't you think that I'm just the Jewish? Like, it was kind of like I even kind of read that as like a sarcastic kind of comment of like,
yeah,
but I'm the Jewish Messiah. Why are you coming to me?
Exactly. And that's what I was getting at.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Because this is not the first occurrence that Jesus has healed a Gentile.
Yeah.
He
actually does it frequently.
Exactly.
And when people ask him, he usually just does it, because he's like, this isn't,
yes,
rocket science.
Yes. And so that's the whole reason why I think there was something on her part that caused Jesus to all of a sudden do this.
Right.
Like, this isn't the first Gentile or Canaanite that he's healed, yet for some reason with her, he has chosen to bring up that issue and almost be like, well, I'm the Jewish Messiah. I've only come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Yeah.
Like, what are you asking me for?
No, Jesus has always kind of had like this very sarcastic edge to his voice.
Yes.
That I really appreciate.
And he knows her heart. He knows where she's coming from. And so I got to believe that there's something behind her asking that leads him to say what he says. And like I said, he's not about to be a pawn in her game either. Of like, oh, you're going to use your pride to try and show off whatever racist Jew is watching.
Right.
That, oh yeah, see, your Messiah is going to, help me out and, kind of throw it in your face kind of thing. He's like, I'm not playing that game.
No.
And instead brings her to a place of ultimate humility. And then by her faith, he heals her daughter, you know, which is what he does normally,
Mhm.
you know. And so I love that story in that there's so much to think about with it,
Right.
and it's almost out of the norm of what Jesus normally just does
Right.
for even
Well, it's
Gentiles.
like the centurion, the Roman centurion, right?
Yeah.
When he heals his son, you know, and he goes back and he says, like, he finds a way to pick at them a little bit, where it's
Yeah.
like they don't, there's not this expectation, but they like, but he actually checks to make sure it's like, you know, is this actually what you believe? Are you just telling me the words I want to hear,
Yeah.
or do you actually believe this? You know, and then that's real faith. You know,
Yes.
it's not just, oh, if I say these magic words, then Jesus will do this. It's like, what do you actually believe? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and I, for one, it's like I look at stuff like this and I'm like, you know, like I truly believe that Jesus doesn't look. I mean, I think Jesus, like I think it's really important to understand. It's like it is okay to talk about the fact that we're different. It is
Mhm.
okay to bring up the fact it's like, you know, it's like my brother-in-law who's black, um, or my niece and nephew who are half Chinese, or the fact that it's like their life experience is going to be different because of the color of their skin, you
Mhm.
know. And it's okay to say that. It is okay to bring that up as part of
Yeah.
something, but also at the same time, that doesn't change how God feels about anyone.
Mm-hmm.
What's between your legs, what you look like, you know, all what's in your heart. The fact is that God still loves all of us equally and we matter to him,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And that's kind of this where we come to this focal point of like, you know, why are we not treating, especially as the church, almost wholesale? Like, why are we, like, in America, like, why are we treating people that look different than us differently?
Mm-hmm.
Because Jesus wouldn't.
Yeah.
They come to him in faith and he gives them what they want.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't mean he's going to give you a new car.
No. No.
No.
We're
So
not.
like,
We're
like
not. We
we're
don't
not,
believe in the prosperity
no,
gospel.
we are not. But we also are like, but God, if you come to God asking for healing or wisdom or peace, you know, he can grant those things.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's just, my heart has been really heavy thinking about this is how Jesus treated people that the culture cast aside. That's always been kind of his shtick, was going after the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the Samaritans,
Yeah.
going after the people that the culture at large was like, yeah, these people don't matter. You're just here for us, right? You know,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
I don't know.
Which is what I love about that last story is
Mhm.
that it puts everybody on a playing field.
Right.
It puts the oppressors and the oppressed on the
Mhm.
same level field with him.
Mhm.
It's like, look, I am the Messiah, and I'm going to bring Savior to both,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to play either of your games.
Yeah.
You know, and so to the people that are genuinely racist, to the people that are wanting to get revenge because of racism,
Mhm.
he's not playing either of your games.
No.
He's here to bring peace
Mhm.
under the kingdom of God.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know.
like using Jesus as a weapon or as a buzzword,
Yeah.
you know. I just don't think he doesn't do that. He's going to subvert everything. Like, and that's one of the things, Jesus never acts in the way that we expect. Like, we put
Mhm.
Jesus in this box and like, oh, he's going to do this. No, he never does.
Yeah.
He always acts in ways that are very different, but it also, because our role as God's image bearers on this planet, you know, it is our job to make sure that injustice is called out. You
Mhm.
know, I feel very and believe very strongly that if you see someone being mistreated, period,
Yes.
you should say something, because it's like, they are a human and they have value, you
Yeah.
know, full stop.
Full stop.
Doesn't matter what they look like.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
don't know. So that's just kind of what's been on our hearts and what the Bible says about it, which I
Yeah.
think is kind of important.
Which is
But
it's insane how relevant the Bible can be even in situations like this.
2,000 years later.
2000 years later, you know, like
Yeah.
racism is not a new thing,
No.
you know?
Well, it's something my dad always liked to say, and I think he's right. It's like, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, very ecclesiastical of him.
Right. It looks very like all the issues that we face today, people have been facing for a long time. It just
Yeah.
looks different, you know.
Yeah.
Hatred and racism and evil and sin, you know,
Mhm.
looks different now than it did then.
Yeah.
But it's still, that's what it is. It's still evil. It's still hatred. It's still racism, and it's still sin.
Yes.
And that's that's something that I've been really struck by was this, like, this is the first time that I've ever had to really wrestle with sin on a cultural level,
Mm.
because like I think I've kind of lived in this like little Utah bubble. Cause I mean, honestly, Utah's pretty great. I can't speak from any sort of experience. And I'm sure that any of and I don't know if you've ever faced anything like that because you're half Mexican.
Hmm.
So I don't know if you've ever had to deal with any sort of racism here, like,
No,
or in California or,
no. Oddly enough, in this day and age, I feel like my non full whiteness actually helps me in some circumstances, and
yeah,
that's the odd part because like yes, I've coming where I come from. I actually come from a pretty diverse community in California.
right.
Like there was a lot of white people. Like I'm not going to say there wasn't, but there was also a lot of Mexicans,
Hmm.
and definitely the minority was Asians.
Hmm.
So it was like whites, Mexicans, blacks than Asians,
Hmm.
and that was like the demographic and numbers
Going
in the,
down.
yeah,
Yeah.
going
Like
down.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've always kind of grown up with a pretty diverse group of
Hmm.
friends,
Yeah.
and like even a diverse group of uh, even like straight and gay friends as well.
Right.
Like there's always been a pretty healthy diversity in my life, especially since like hanging out with my dad's side of the family, which is
Hmm.
the Mexican side of the family.
Hmm.
And they make friends, and they make friends with white people, black people. I've seen them make friends with just about anybody.
Right.
Drug dealers, drug addicts, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like come from a pretty weird background, but I feel like oddly enough because my last name is Gonzalez, I almost feel like that helps me,
Yeah.
which almost
Well,
makes me feel gross.
right.
It's like that shouldn't.
In a depressing sort of way, it's like it's also because you look white.
Yeah, like I look white, so that helps me, and my last name is Gonzalez, and that
Well,
helps me.
and that's
It's like
and that's the scary part is because it doesn't matter that you're half Mexican, right?
yeah,
It matters that you look white.
exactly.
It's so superficial that it almost makes me more mad
Yeah,
because it's like
it's almost gross.
it's almost gross because it's like not only like you'll see someone like like for instance like you see someone did a study not too long ago where they would track they'd put the exact same qualifications on a resume and then the name would be something either stereotypically black or stereotypically white, and it was like a 5-to-1 acceptance ratio for the white names versus the
Hmm.
black names, and you look at that and it's like something so superficial as is that like that just
Yeah,
that infuriates me.
yeah,
Like that's so maddening
and
that that happens.
but then on the other side of the coin, like for example, bigger companies like Google,
Hmm.
they are almost to a fault not hiring white people
Hmm.
specifically and just hiring minorities,
Hmm.
and that's great, but that's not great in a good way,
Yeah, and I mean,
you know?
and I'm kind of on the fence about that. And because I'm a white dude, I try to like keep my opinions about that sort of thing to a minimum because it's
Yeah.
like I'm another white guy who needs that. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like, and I think in retrospect, I advocate for like a colorblind ish view of how things should work, where it's like yeah, in a perfect world, your ethnicity shouldn't matter. It should just
Hmm.
be your qualifications, who you are as a person, what
Yeah.
you've done, all that sort of thing in a perfect world. But also understanding that what you look like may have had a huge bearing on how you were brought up,
Hmm.
how you were treated, the things you have, the problems the hurdles you have had to face, and recognizing that it's like you might have had to deal with some of the stuff that I haven't had to deal with because I'm white. And I grew
Hmm.
up in Logan, which is like, which is
Logan, Utah.
Logan's about as white as clam chowder, man. Like it is not like there's a small group of Karen refugees from Burma, and there's a um small group of Latino, like mostly from Mexico.
Hmm.
But other than that, it's like white, just white, 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 white.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you kind of in a weird sort of way because it was so relatively culturally homogenous, I didn't really see a whole lot of racism because there weren't really any other races.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there was like two black kids in my school,
Yeah.
like of 1700.
Oh my gosh.
Like that's it.
Talk about minority.
Right.
Oh
Like,
man.
and it's like, I feel bad for them. I don't know what their stories were. Maybe they
Yeah.
faced all kinds of weird stuff, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't try to guess because I
Yeah.
just don't know,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think that's the fair way to put it is I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning of the episode, but I have a friend who posted on his Instagram. He was a part of some of the protests in his area, and he wore a shirt that said hashtag you matter.
Hmm.
It wasn't a Black Lives Matter. It wasn't All Lives Matter. It was a you matter.
Hmm.
And I think that's so important because every person on an individual basis, not on a group basis, on an individual basis matters.
Right.
And they have their own stories. You know, even the black people right now that I see on a lot of like Republican media that are like, oh, we're not that oppressed and whatnot. And it's like, you know, maybe for them,
Yeah.
maybe in their situation,
Maybe they lucked out and they didn't have to deal with much in their lifetime.
exactly, you know, maybe, but
And
that's
that'd
the
be
thing.
great, you know.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
There's nothing wrong with not facing oppression. Like
Exactly.
that's a good thing to have.
Yeah,
you know?
and so in a very real sense, they matter as well.
Yeah.
You know, but let's not ignore the people that do experience that on a daily basis, you know, or that even in their just day-to-day culture feel like the society's against them. And like, I can't blame anyone for feeling that because I'm not in their shoes.
Right.
They experience what they experience. And I think we have to take every single person seriously when it comes to that. We have to weigh it, of course, because some people could be making some stuff up. But at the same time, we have to take people seriously always.
And I think saying none of it happens is a fantasy.
Oh yeah.
Because you like, I mean, that's the fun thing about social media is like, I'm not a huge fan of it, to be completely honest. I think in this day and age, people have become addicted to the constant stream of input, you know, and now because the input has become overwhelmingly negative, it's become a problem. And it's like, and you'll see like pictures and stories occasionally of people that do good things. Like you'll see like cops blessing their community, or you'll see like black people and cops, or black cops even that'll do something really heartwarming, or like there's still good in the world, and finding that is really important, but also
doesn't make for a good story.
It doesn't make for a good story, but then also recognizing it's like, look, even if it's sensationalized, the fact that there are still people that are dying because of the color of their skin.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
That is
so messed up. Messed up doesn't even begin to like cover like how unbelievably wrong that is, you know, even in the sight of God. Like it's just, and this truth of like, you know, because we're people and our sin just breaks everything. Sin broke the world. It will continue to break the world until Christ returns, you know?
Yeah.
And that's where like our call as Christians is, because I think a lot of people are like, God, do something. And he's like, you're my hands and feet, go.
Yes. That's such a good way of putting it.
It's like we're just waiting for God to just snap his fingers and make it better, like a good Thanos. Like it's just not gonna. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
Oh
right?
my gosh, that's such a good way of putting it.
It's not gonna happen.
He's not Thanos.
Like a good Thanos. It's just not gonna happen.
Just get rid of all the racist people.
Get rid of all the racist people. Just snap them from the earth. It's not gonna happen.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me of a meme.
Oh no.
Just this. Okay, it was one of those. You know the memes where this person like is shouting to God, like, God, why haven't you gotten rid of all the evil people? And this angel comes from earth and like hands the guy a note, and the guy reads the note and it says, if he did, he would have to kill you too. Like, in a real sense, because of sin, if God were Thanos, he would snap everybody out of existence.
Everyone out of existence.
And the scary part about that is he actually does have the power to do that.
He does.
He doesn't need a gauntlet. He doesn't need gems. He doesn't need to destroy the Avengers to do it. He has the power to do that, and he doesn't.
And he doesn't do it. And I think, you know, and I'm not going to ask why, you know, it's like, why does this, I mean, he promised he wouldn't, to be fair, after the flood.
Fair.
Yeah.
To be fair.
He promised he wouldn't.
Yep.
But
he did it once. He's not going to do it again.
Not going to do it again. And I think, I mean, that's actually something that's really important to note, is that's one reason why he hasn't done it, is because he said he wouldn't. Because I mean, honestly, after World War II and the Holocaust and stuff, no one would have blamed him if he's just like, okay, we're starting over.
You know what?
Yeah, we're trying again. Round 3. Let's see if we can get it right this time.
Yeah, for real.
And I think it's just understanding that it's like that because God made us in His image, we are also, that is a responsibility that we have. You know, to also carry His image and what He really like as followers of Christ. It's like, we are doing our best to amend the relationship that he had with us in the garden, however long ago, you know. But that's also a responsibility for us, is like, okay, if we're doing that, we're supposed to care for the garden and everything on it. That includes the people that other people might forget about. So it's just, there's a lot there. But you know,
And to real quick go back to the whole flood thing.
Yeah.
Because I love that. When the flood happened, that was like what people cry today. Like, God, why don't you just snap your fingers and make all the bad people go away? The thing is, you're right. He did do that at one point, but it didn't solve the sin problem.
No.
Sin still ran even more rampant afterwards. And if he did it again, it would still be a problem.
It would still be a problem.
Which is why Jesus came.
Mhm.
Jesus came to solve the sin problem.
Mhm.
And he will come again to ultimately solve the sin problem in another flood of blood. To put it metal, you know? So like, that's the thing. In our day and age, to where we are at right now, we as hands and feet of Jesus need to do our part, not just in the church, but in day-to-day life, to be Christ to anybody,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
regardless of skin color, regardless of sex, regardless of anything. We need to be Jesus to anyone,
Right.
you know?
And being Jesus doesn't mean that you get to look out and say, repent, you sinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely
that's
not.
all the can of worms, and we won't go down that road, but it's like,
But we'll get there.
we'll get there eventually. I mean, the biggest thing I would just say is don't do the Holy Spirit's job
Yes.
in
That's
this.
a good way of putting it.
So, but also at the same time, there's a lot of ways, a lot of very practical ways. Like you don't have to go to a protest. You don't have to, there are very practical ways to help, So I would challenge people that have chosen to stay silent, even if you're just willing to, like, you know what, I'm going to make a commitment between me and God that somehow I am going to bless the lives of my Black brothers and sisters, or my Latino brothers and sisters, or people that face racism on any level,
Yeah.
So anyway, I hope you guys have kind of are willing to hear, not just hear it, but listen,
Yeah. Yeah.
And really pray about it, because a lot of this is kind of hard stuff, and we don't want to pin anyone to a wall. That's not our job, And it's not our job. We don't want to do the Holy Spirit's job. It's like, if you listen to this and you're like, great, and then there's no conviction, and it's like, okay, cool, whatever. But I would request that you pray about it and really think, it's like, okay, what can I do? Because it is our job, in a way, to make the world a better place, because we are the hands and feet of Jesus. So, I just would close with that, and hope you guys would be willing to keep that in mind. So
yeah, it doesn't entirely matter if you say something. It matters if you do something.
Yeah.
Like, people focus on, well, if you didn't put a social media post out, then you're the problem.
Right.
No, the people that don't do anything as a result of this are the problem.
Right. They look at that and they go, well, that sucks, and then go back to life as normal. Nothing's going to change.
Exactly. So if there's a genuine heart change on your part, and God is leading you to be the Good Samaritan to anybody, then that is the ultimate goal. So
cool.
There we go.
There we go.
That was a long one.
That was a long one. What have you been listening to lately, man?
You know what? Let's do it. So I've been listening.
We haven't hung out for a while. So
yeah, true.
And if you guys just want to end the episode now, you can.
Yeah.
We're just talking about stuff now.
Yeah.
If you enjoy the jokes, then
for real. So I don't know if you've listened to the new August Burns Red album.
Not really, actually. I listened to some of it, and it just, I listened to it. I'm kind of bored.
It's not my absolute favorite.
Just Phantom Anthem was so good.
Yeah, it was.
It slaps so hard.
Yeah. and that's the thing. Like, to a fault, I'm the kind of person that judges an album by its first song.
Yeah.
And that's honestly what the music industry does. Like, they make sure that the first song is the banger.
Right.
And it sets the tone for the entire album. And I feel like the first song in that album it didn't hit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I haven't listened to it a whole lot, because I listened to some of them and I'm like, eh. And then I just went back to my playlist. I mean, I really should give it like a fair listen, because I mean, I know a lot of people are really hammering on like the lyrical content was really, really good, which I ordinarily don't listen to, because I care about the production, I care about the instrumentation, and then the lyrics, I don't really understand them anyway. So I just kind of like tune them out.
Which is why we can sometimes listen to some metal that's not so great.
Right. It's like I'm claiming ignorance because I have no idea I have no idea you said that.
Exactly.
Like anything by Lamb of God.
Yeah, another politically charged band.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So we may not be on the same side of the political charged fence with them, though.
No, definitely not. But as
They're
far
very
as
angry people,
as far as their instrumental's concerned,
it's so good.
It's so good. I don't know if Chris Adler is a part of the band anymore.
He's not.
Yeah, that's right.
He had it was like a surgery or he injured something and he can't play.
That depresses me.
I know, because he was great.
He was. I had his drum video back when the album. I don't know. I don't think the album was called this, but it was the one that had "Laid to Rest" on it.
Oh,
Ashes of the Wake.
Redneck.
No, Ashes of the Wake. I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
Redneck was on the Wrath album.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was that the album wasn't called Redneck. Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard a ton of. I've just kind of listened to like their top 10 on Spotify. I'm like, wow, these are bangers.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's Ashes of the Wake.
Okay.
That had "Laid to Rest" on it, and I remember watching him and his brother Willie. They were on stage, and he's kind of giving like the tutorial on how some of his footwork goes and all that. It's just like, man, some of the innovation that went into his style was so good.
Well, it's like you hear that sort of innovation in a lot of like modern bands with younger drummers because they grew up listening to like Chris Adler, and they're like, wow, this is cool, and then their styles borrow very heavily from that,
Yeah.
So, but
like any band that just sounds like As I Lay Dying, I'm down for.
Yeah.
Did
you ever listen to that Bleed From Within stuff I sent you?
I don't think so.
I'm going to play it for you after this because it is so good. Cool. It is so good.
Cool.
They like I've been listening to them because I've never heard of them before, and then they released some single that showed up on like the new core playlist on Spotify, and I like listen just on repeat. I'm like, this is so good.
Speaking of which, we're eventually going to make the switch to Spotify because Google is making a huge push for their YouTube music platform, and I'm like, and it's bombarding me on YouTube in general. Like there's just all of these playlists that are popping up according to my interests, and it's like, no, I'm not here to listen to music. I'm here to watch something.
Right.
Like
it's like YouTube music is weird, and the only time when I could use YouTube music is when there's something on YouTube that's not on Spotify.
True.
Which usually means it's bootlegged. So because Spotify, like they actually have to have like permission from the label to post it on. So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, then there's the new I Am Abomination album, which is fantastic. Just absolutely unbelievably good. And yeah, but other than that, pretty much just those things. And then business as usual.
Business as usual. Yep. Yeah.
So,
I feel like this job is definitely, there's been a lot more like communication over Slack, than normal, just because we're collaborating and we're doing stuff like that. And so like, I haven't really been able to just kind of sit there and grind,
and just
all
listen.
day.
You're busy in meetings and talking. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I've never been in so many meetings before, and it's. I mean, I'm fine with meetings because like I'm kind of a manager at heart, and so I get the need for organization.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like that doesn't allow me to just kind of sit there and code all day.
Right.
Listening to metal.
Right.
So.
Yeah, there are days where I really like that, and there are days where I get really bored. So it just depends on the day.
True.
Because I actually like will sit down and I'll pull up like 5-hour long chill step mixes on YouTube just because it's kind of like this really zen like background level stuff. Because if I'm listening to metal, I'll get too into it and start listening to the metal and not doing my work. So, so I have to be careful with that sort of thing at work. But yeah.
You know who I've also been listening to? Gorillas. They're not metal at all.
No, that's okay.
But so good. Like it just.
I've been listening to the Midnight a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's like that really zen like background. Like,
I love
driving music. It's so good, dude.
And I think they came out with a new album too.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to look it up because there's that and like Owl City, and I found this new guy, this composer named Thomas James White, who does like the super ambient ethereal stuff. That's like it's not music in the sense of like it'd be great airplane. Like if I'm driving on a road trip, it'd be awesome road trip music because you're just kind of listening, and it's got a lot of really cool layers to it, and it's kind of very new agey ambient type thing, but it's like classical-ish. I don't know. It's weird. It's super weird, but it's really good. I really like it a lot. So
yeah. So I've been enjoying stuff like that. Just kind of getting back into Gorillaz because they did recently release a new album.
Oh, nice.
And it's all right. I feel like they are the ultimate experimentation band. Like they experiment with so many different styles and so many different things, and which means a lot of their content could be hit and miss.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about like majority of their content. It just kind of misses with me.
Right.
But then there's those few songs here and there every couple of albums that just really hit home.
Yeah, you're just like, wow, this is great. Yeah.
Like Andromeda, Dirty Harry, Melancholy Hill, like a lot of those ones. Humility, the new Trans song, that one's pretty cool. So yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of neat stuff.
That's awesome.
But I'm so sick and tired of Clint Eastwood. Like that was their original, like the song that everybody loved.
Oh, gosh,
Hey,
I'd have to,
happy, I'm feeling glad I got sunshine in a bag. I'm useless.
I,
Not for long, the future. Yeah, I'm so sick and tired of that song.
I don't know, man. I've kind of, this is so pretentious of me, but I've always kind of like had some pride that I don't listen to a whole lot of pop music, which
Yeah.
is super elitist and stupid. And I
Yep.
recognize that.
You elitist bastard.
Well, it makes me sad because then there sound like bands like I Am Abomination, which is one of my favorite bands. They are just unbelievably talented. And they just released a new album and they have like 30,000 listeners on Spotify. Like they're defunct metalcore bands from like 2008 that have more listeners than that. And that just
Yeah.
makes me so sad because it's just, I don't know. Like I look at that and just like good music, like trying to find, it's constantly in pursuit of good music, you know?
Do you see on Spotify? You see the listen count, the
Yeah.
listeners or whatever.
Yeah.
So you don't
So
see
it'll
any of that on Google Play.
Oh yeah. It'll show you who's, it's also a good barometer to see how popular they are. And it's like, and I'm the sort of person who's like, if I find a good band, I want them to be popular because I
Yeah.
want them to continue making money so they can keep writing music
Yeah.
that I listen to and I like. So
Exactly.
it's just kind of like this. It's not kind of like I have this pride that I listen to a band that no one's heard of. It's bands that's like no one's heard of, but I want people to hear of them because they're great. So yeah.
It's like with people that listen to nothing but underground and like nobody knows about music.
And then when they
It's
get
like that's cool and all, but at the same time, that band's not going to continue if they're not
Right.
making money.
yeah,
So like I don't know. I remember I used to be all big on like the no sellout, but like everybody's got to sell out if they're going to continue music.
I mean, the thing that really sucks is like those smaller bands. When I see them, if they release music that I listen to constantly, I'll buy merch from them. You know, like
Yeah.
just because it's like this is cool, and I want to keep listening to your music. So like when the I Am Abomination's latest album came out, like I bought like a tab book because I want to learn how to play guitar better. I bought like a CD and I bought like one of their old CDs and stuff like that. So it's like I threw a bunch of money at them. I'm like, here, make more music.
Nice.
So yeah, but yeah, cool. Well, I really have to pee.
Okay.
So
Then on that note,
on that note,
this is Levi.
this has been the Bible.